we've completed units 1 through 3, and they have been focusing on social and historical constructions of gender. In the next couple of weeks, we're going to be talking about public and private, and then about violence against women. And so in this little lecture, I'm going to be covering a couple of just important terms and concepts that you've come across in your readings but have not necessarily been overtly discussed, and we want to make sure that you understand them so that as you continue to come across them, you can use them in your writings and you can understand exactly what it is that we're talking about. I will say that in the first 3 units, you guys have been doing really well with discussion, and your reading responses have looked really good. Continue with your reading responses to integrate the readings into those, because that really helps your grade and lets me know that you understand what it is that's going on in the class. So yeah, that looks really good. Also, I really appreciate it when you connect it to your world too, so that's really good also. So we'll get on and continue with this. And you will have noticed that there is an ism worksheet that goes along with this lecture, so that you can find some of the terms on that worksheet. Okay, so first off, in U.S. feminist history, we have the concept of waves to talk about feminism, and historically this is how feminism has popularly been defined, and you may have heard of first, second, and third wave feminism. And so first wave is essentially the beginning, if we can define such a thing, of feminism in the United States, meaning the beginning of the fight for suffrage to the achievement of the right to vote in 1920, and this was the period of suffrage. And the second wave feminism includes Betty Friedan's publication of The Feminist Mystique, and the violence movement, and the fight for sexual freedom, and many radical feminists still today identify as second wave. Now, third wave feminism is essentially the current wave of feminism. It's the second generation of contemporary feminists, so sometimes it's conceived as the children or the daughters of second wave feminists. The primary issues that are dealt with in third wave feminism, which is, currently, would be representation, gender, popular culture, and body politics. But also one of the main things that we've seen happen in third wave feminism is a new focus, or finally a focus, on transnational feminism and diversity in feminism, and realizing that there isn't just one woman's story, but a very there are diverse stories and issues within feminism, and that we have to deal with feminism from a transnational standpoint. So you may have already realized that your textbook really comes from a third wave feminist standpoint. There are many critiques of the waves of talking about feminism from a perspective of waves. And one of the primary critiques of discussing feminism from the standpoint of waves is that it's really limiting and that it's very Western. So what talking about feminism from the standpoint of waves does is that it leaves out a lot of people's stories. It leaves out anything that isn't Western. It leaves out a lot, it leaves out the stories of women historically who are not white, who are not middle class, who were not focused in the 1920s on the right to vote, and it makes it look like that is what every feminist was doing. And so the argument against the waves is essentially that we need to look back on feminist history from a third wave feminist standpoint and to find transnational feminist history, because there is one, and to realize that there is more to feminist history than these three waves, and that this is limiting. So that's the critique of the first, second, and the third wave. But these still are very popularly used, so it is important that you know them. In dealing with difference and inequality, there are two primary ways of approaching those, which you've seen. And for like arguing for difference and equality, there's the feminist essentialist standpoint, where biology is an important system of difference between women and men. And the argument would be that men are naturally masculine and women are naturally feminine. And you'll actually see in this next section, in the public and private section, that feminists use this essentialist standpoint early on to argue for rights. So within that argument was sort of an essentialist bent. So you can look for that. And more popular, or in more of your readings, you've seen a constructionist viewpoint where biology is not destiny and expectations about gender are socially constructed. So this is more commonly used today in a more like popular, I guess, viewpoint that is used today within feminism. Okay, so all feminisms. Obviously, we need to define feminism, right? What is feminism after all, if we're going to be talking about it? So there are different types of feminisms, there are different viewpoints of feminism, and there are different histories of feminism, but all feminisms do the following. They are progressive movements for social change that focus on the ways that power and inequality intersect with gender differences. So we're looking at power and inequality and how it affects gender differences. So it's not necessarily just about women. It's about women and men. It's about people, and it's about humans. However, and you probably know this because most people do, feminism has gotten sort of a popular perception as being anti-man. And what we need to think about is the fact that it's not anti-man, but it's anti-patriarchy, and it's anti-oppression. But it is pro-man, it is pro-woman, and it is pro-person. But it will always work against patriarchy, not against men. So what is patriarchy? Patriarchy, from this definition, is a socio-cultural system that is male-dominated, identified, and centered, as you guys have seen from your readings, and that maintains these traits through oppression of really anyone, including men, who do not achieve society's definition of ideal normative masculinity. So anyone who doesn't achieve this normative masculinity, like the strong, in control, powerful man, anyone who doesn't do that is oppressed, is marginalized, or is not given the centered power within the construct of the patriarchy, of our government, of our society, and that is what living in a patriarchy is. And our Western world is a patriarchy. The majority of the world is a patriarchy, and you'll continue to read about that a lot in this next section of public and private. So patriarchy is oppressive, and we need to understand what oppression is. Oppression isn't just not liking someone or hating on them or being mad at them, because you can hate someone or you can be mad at them without being capable of oppressing them. The difference is that that hatred has to be paired with the power to oppress them. You have to be socially more powerful than the group that you hate in order to bring oppression upon them. And so sexism, racism, classism, ageism, heterosexism, and ableism are all forms of oppression because they are connected to not only prejudice against a group, but also power, like a construction where there is a group more powerful than another group. And you can read more about this on your ism worksheet. You can also see at the bottom of that ism worksheet that they talk about intersections, where different people have identities where they are being oppressed in more than one way. So maybe they are lower class and young, or lower class and very old, or they are gay and disabled. So you can see that you can start thinking about, like, maybe you can think about your own identity and the ways in which you are oppressed and didn't even know it, and the ways in which you are part of an oppressive group and didn't even know it. The important thing to think about, because this can be super depressing, right? It's super depressing to think about yourself as being oppressed. It's even more depressing in some ways to think about yourself as being an oppressor. But what you want to think about is the fact that we're part of a really big social structure that comes from a really long history, and that we don't choose these things. We don't choose to be oppressed, and we do not choose to be oppressors. But by learning about these oppressions, we can start to educate ourselves, and we can start to choose how we react to these things. Really, that's the best way. That's why you're in this class, right? So if you have more questions about it, or if you're feeling super frustrated, totally email me. But hopefully this helps. Okay, that's all for now. Thanks.